Good morning. Peter, thank you for the kind introduction. Peter, I suppose this is at least the third, maybe fourth time I've been at your conference. And in past years, we've talked about the policy we had to work with members of the Hill to create, to even think about CRISI and the R&E grant program and the Interstate Rail Compact and the CIDP. All of those things we may take for granted took a whole lot of work to create. We'd share that with you, and then we'd be here to tell you about we're going to have a train on the Gulf. We're going to restore that service. Well, it's so nice to be with you today. We're not talking about a train, we're running a train on the coast of the Gulf. Here you see the schedule of the Amtrak Mardi Gras service. So every station gets 4 stops. So it's 2 round trips a day. And the Amtrak crew is doing a great job in delivering a quality service for this train. Here are the stops. You have New Orleans on one end, Mobile on the other, with stops in Bay St. Louis, Biloxi, Gulfport, and Pascagoula. These are the infrastructure projects that CRISI, some total investment of $240 million of CRISI funds in CSX, Norfolk Southern right-of-way, and at the Port of Mobile. Those projects are in design and underway. Obviously, that certainly sweetens the pot for creating this passenger rail service. But what have all of these investments gotten for us? And that's the story we want to share with you today. Amtrak's original estimate was there'd be about 42,000 people a year riding this train. They then updated the estimate, and the last official estimate I saw was that in 5 years you may hit 75,000 people. Well, in our first 7 months, we carried 100,000 passengers on this route. Revenue has far exceeded all estimates, and I was talking to an Amtrak exec about this is a happy train. And she said, well, I guess so. That train sells more Tito's vodka and Prosecco than any train in the nation. But it speaks to the fact that this trip is about a culture. It's not about the fastest way to get between, but it's the most civilized way to get between. And you don't have a $35 a night car garage fee when you get to New Orleans or Mobile. The people have embraced it, but what you need to know and what we want to share with you is how we got from the aspiration of passenger rail after Katrina to the success of this train. This is a video produced by Transportation for America to tell this story.
This is an example of a group of people not willing to take no for an answer.
If we had stopped every time we were told no, so many good things would have never come about.
We've been at this so long, and maybe we're just stupid, but we're going to keep going.
I mean, we're just a group of, 20-something people in the South. But I've always believed with enough commitment, we could do it.
Yes, we can have trains, it's obvious. The truth is, it's not even that hard. It's just persistence.
You can never, ever take no for an answer. If they say there is no opening, you make an opening.
Rail is a critical part and has been. It's never gone away. We just don't tell the story.
Katrina hit, and the nation watched people walk out of New Orleans down the interstate because they had no other way of getting out of this big, vibrant city. What they didn't see was along the Mississippi coast, everything for a 60-mile stretch, 2 miles from the shore, was totally wiped away from the face of the earth. And the people there crawled out and they began to go to work to try to restore their lives. Every transportation infrastructure was rebuilt. Highways were rebuilt, bridges rebuilt, railroads rebuilt in 4 months. Everything but returning passenger rail. Amtrak was not interested at that time in running passenger rail service along the Gulf. The freights surely didn't want it, and there wasn't political leadership that was focused on it at the time.
We struggled.
There'd be times the state would say, we're not going to support it, we're just not going to do this. And we would think, man, we kind of got it together. And then there'd be a new president. And then they would appoint new officials like the FRA or DOT. And we'd say, well, we've got to go all the way back to the beginning and educate these people all over again.
The Southern Rail Commission was at a crossroads. They determined we're either going to have to go in a direction that actually does something or go home, because we've got more important things to do than just meet. Yet we said, where a door is shut for you, let's create a policy that opens that door.
That really took us from a advocacy position, we would like to do this, to going to Congress, to our federal delegations and saying, here's how we can.
But you have to have somebody with some power and some commitment. You have to have the politicians that see the vision, like Senator Wicker.
As this representative of Mississippi and a senator from the southeastern part of the United States, we believe in passenger rail too. It's important.
We were told no. There's no federal policy that allows for infrastructure improvements. There's no federal policy that allows for operating support. Well, you know, working with Senator Wicker's office, we said, well, we can create a policy. Senator Roger Wicker listens, and if you make a strong case to him, and he believes it, then when he says he is committed and will do something, he stays fixed. So we said, let's put together a demonstration train so that we can travel and inspect the track.
We believe we can make safe, on-time, profitable passenger rail work for the Gulf Coast, and today is a great step in getting that to be a reality.
That train left New Orleans and traveled all the way to Florida, but it traveled through these wonderful little cities along the Mississippi coast and into Mobile.
And you saw people of all walks of life lining the tracks from all these little towns. And they saw this train as a hope for their future, said this connects us to the country. Planes don't come there, the buses don't run. If you don't drive, there's no way to get there.
The crowds got bigger. Their support got stronger. They may have at first said, perhaps we should have a train, with the end of the route is we're getting this train.
You saw on our video the public support that is there. And that's why Amtrak was formed, to support the national rail system.
The eyes of the nation are on this route because it'll be the first such brand new service created in the South in over 70 years. I take no pleasure in telling you that throughout the effort to restore passenger rail service, CSX Railroad has been neither transparent nor completely honest in dealing with the Southern Rail Commission, Amtrak, or as you heard, with the Federal Railroad Administration.
Freight rail and passenger rail have coexisted since the beginning of the Amtrak experiment decades and decades ago. It will work again on the Gulf Coast.
There were so many times when we all wanted to give up.
It's been 17 years. It's time to stop stalling. It's time to move this project forward.
We've been working for all these years, and there were so many times that you were just like, man, what are we doing? Because none of us get paid to do this.
It is time that CSX obey the law and the will of the people as Congress has expressed it, and allow Amtrak access to freight right-of-way, to give passenger rail preference because human beings are important.
The extraordinary thing about the hearing is that it went on for 9 days, and we had over 24 representatives from the Gulf Coast come and tell us why they wanted the rail back. We had mayors, we had city councilmen. It was one of the most remarkable experiences that I've certainly ever had as a member of the board.
And among the work of many of us, we were able to figure out a way forward. And here we are today.
Okay, folks, this Mardi Gras train is leaving New Orleans for the first time today, with stops between New Orleans, Bay St. Louis, Gulfport, Mississippi, Biloxi, and Pascagoula. Final stop, Mobile, Alabama. We are so excited. We hope you are. If you are, make some noise this morning. All right. Welcome aboard.
This is going to be amazing. We've been waiting a long time, and we can finally say it's here.
Such an incredible day to join leaders from all across the 3 states that we're here today. I could feel the excitement at every stop that we're at, whether it be high school bands or locals, even not just at the stations, just riding down the road and seeing random people stopping and watching and waving.
It's a whole nother economic engine that we haven't had for 20 years. And the routes this time are even better. It means more hotel room nights. It means more attraction. It means more food and beverage, restaurant covers.
I want to introduce to you now a man who muscled his way in that U.S. Senate and got us a train.
Are we ready for Amtrak? It's been 20 years. Today, we put in one of the final pieces of the puzzle in recovery from Katrina. Thank you. Thank you.
I'm just excited about the tourist economy, but I'm also excited about the long-term sustainable economies when people have jobs and are accessible to them via this transportation alternative.
The Southern Rail Commission, we have worked so hard to make this happen, but they've done the heavy lifting, and it took all of us to get it done. But it is a great day to enhance the Mississippi Gulf Coast.
It's a win-win-win for federal, state, and local government coming together on an issue that was of importance to all of us.
What I'd like to see is different parts of the country point to the Gulf Coast and say we want that kind of effort in our part of the country.
When we started the struggle to return service on the Gulf, we realized we couldn't just serve the Gulf. We had to create a federal framework of policies that could certainly be used for the Gulf service, but could be used in Montana, could be used in Idaho, all across the country. And that's the way you weave together enough support from people who have the levers of powers in their hand to make these things happen for a nation.
Rail transportation really benefits from having a network of services. And so if we can combine the City of New Orleans, the Sunset Limited, the Crescent, Mardi Gras service, potentially with other new service in the region, then it will all reinforce each other.
How much it meant to this region and how much it could mean to other regions means that cumulatively, in aggregate, if we can do it in more places, it will mean that much to this country.
Success on the Gulf Coast will be a critical part of other people coming, as we have done, and say, how do you do it? What did it take?
We just had to keep telling our story and keep telling our story and keep telling our story and just didn't quit.
You have to stay in a fight mode for so long, it will actually feel odd not to be fighting anymore, to be rejoicing that at this point, the fight's complete. Now, it has to be sustained. The story has to continue to be told. And more importantly, it has to be shared with others who are at the beginning of their struggle in other parts of the country to say, no, you can do it if you persevere. And if you have the will and the spine to stay with it, then this little railroad shines a terrific light on dreams all across this country. And that's how you get it done. And at the Surface Transportation Board, they were talking about the great success of this train, so far greater than anyone would have ever estimated. And they said, we want to use the Mardi Gras service as a model for how we build out and expand passenger rail in the country. And I thanked them for their kind words, but I said, this can't be the model, because it took us 20 years. And we can't take 20 years on every expansion of passenger rail we want to accomplish for the people that we serve. And you know, in so many parts of the country, and honestly here as well, if your only option for transportation provided for you is a car, then do you have a choice, or was the choice made for you? So Peter alluded to an important city in the South that was less than euphoric about the expansion of passenger rail between Mobile and New Orleans. And Stephen McNair, Dr. McNair, was at the very center of this entire discussion and still is today. And Stephen, tell us about the great Mobile turnaround.
John Robert.
Here.
John Robert, you got it? Oh, you want me here? Oh, sorry.
Yeah, because you got to click your slide.
Thank you very much, John Robert. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for the invitation. Thank you, everybody in the room. And as the slide says, the Great Mobile Turnaround, that is an apt description to go from STB hearings and all of the different conversations that were had locally about can this happen, should this happen, will it ever happen, to now celebrating, as John Roberts said, over 100,000 riders to date, with great celebration there. So, you know, we're going to go through some of how that happened and how we got from it will never happen to how do we keep this forever. And as you heard, John Spain and Knox Ross and other members from the Rail Commission saying it took 20 years to get there. This was a long process. Katrina, of course, was a long time ago, but it took a long time to get back to where we are today. And it's a different service as well. Previously, of course, it was a long-distance train. This is 2 trains a day with a commuter line. And being from the city that founded Mardi Gras, I will say the train starts in Mobile and ends in New Orleans, just as Mardi Gras starts in Mobile and ends in New Orleans. But nevertheless, people have their opinions on that, which you can read about in all of the earned media that has come about from this, because people are so excited about this train returning to Mobile. So it did not start smoothly, and it didn't start smoothly because there was a lot of unknowns, and there was a lot of hand-wringing, a lot of consternation, kind of wondering, if this train comes to Mobile, what does it mean to our industry? What does it mean to our freight carriers? What does it mean to the port? What does it mean to our economy? Mobile is a mid-sized city that depends heavily on such things. There's a lot of coal that comes in on trains that is then released on barges, all the Class 1s that come and go north, south, east, west, and of course we are the only port city in the state of Alabama. So anything that would have gotten in the way, impeded that growth, you probably saw there was a lot of dredging going on at the time in terms of bringing in bigger ships for the deepening and widening of the channel. That has all occurred, but there was just a lot of questions of, well, what if? Do we need Amtrak because we need the port? Do we need Amtrak because we've got to have coal, we've got to have freight, and all these kind of things moving? And of course, as John Roberts said, you don't stop. You keep pushing, and you keep pushing at the local level, the county level, the state, and the federal level. And you do it through grassroots efforts and data to get around, as you see on the screen, these kind of folks. And, I'll tell you that this was not, this particular commentator is a North Alabama talk radio host and blogger. There were members of our city council, we've had elections since, but there were members of our previous iteration of the city council that on the record when people like myself and representatives from Amtrak and, Todd Stennis especially, as we were pushing this at the local level, said, why would anybody take the train to Mobile? And we would just shake our heads and say, thousands of reasons. You've got to believe in the product. You've got to believe in the service. And as you saw in that video, and as you're going to hear from Nikki Moon, it's also about placing it into context for the riders. It's the full experience. It is the train, but it's about where you stop along the way. And so that's what we're going to talk about a little bit with Mobile and the other locations in Mississippi is all the buy-in. You saw in the video there were city council members from New Orleans, you had senators from Mississippi. This was a comprehensive buy-in from getting people from A to B, but also there are lots of different stops along the way, so A to B is not just one thing. And then your experience on the train and off the train is so regional, it's so specialized, it's so interesting and fun. This isn't just like hopping on any other train. And so that's what I do recommend you do, where if you do expand, you look at it within the context of why someone would take your specific train in that specific area for a specific experience. I think that really differentiates what we're doing compared to other trains in the United States. And so getting everybody on board was complicated. It took the Chrissy grant, it took the R&E grant, it took our Port Authority working with our governor, working with our mayor at the time to all come together for funding to finally agree that yes, you can do both. I think somebody in the video used the phrase coexist. Yes, we can go back to that. And we have gone back to that. On-time service for this train, one of the best in the country, meaning we're not getting in the way of freight, freight's not getting in our way. Customer experience, one of the best in the country. And the ridership number speaks for itself. So once you get to the city, how do we immerse you in that experience? Why is Mobile different from Pascagoula? Why is Pascagoula different from Biloxi? Why is Biloxi different from New Orleans? And on and on. And that's where David Clark, who is a member, he couldn't be here today, he's a member of the Southern Rail Commission, but he runs the CVB for Mobile. He has just gone above and beyond to make this a special experience. You see here, you arrive at the platform, which right now we have a temporary platform, a permanent platform will be constructed by Amtrak next year. But when you pull up, but the riders at this point, they just want to be there. They're happy to be there. You pull up, you got people waiting on you, we have golf carts, and here's another thing. You notice in the background, you can see some buildings. This stop is in the heart of downtown. It is about 40 yards from the convention center. It is 3 blocks from all of the big hotels. It is 2 blocks from all of the restaurants. And we wanted it that way. That's important because this particular location before Katrina was the legacy stop for the Amtrak service, the long distance train. Well, that station flooded and then it was torn down. And so using that same location, I think, is very important for this product and for its success. So we have trolley systems if you want to take tours around the downtown. You know, we have great walking experiences. This is Dolphin Street, which, you know, some people describe, you know, a lot of people say Mobile's like a mini New Orleans. Sure, it's very many if we're going to say that. But it has a lot of the similar kind of characters and traits and things like that. And this is kind of your main drag. From where this photo was taken to get back to the Amtrak platform, I don't know, maybe 8 minutes. So you are in the heart of downtown. And then from there, of course, if you do want to go somewhere else, to the airport or, you know, to the 2 interstates and on, you can do that. But if you just want to come for the day, do art walk and all these kind of different things, you can do that. And let me tell you something, I don't have the actual, you know, the hard numbers. We're gonna do that starting in August of this year to kind of get the first year's real data about heads and beds and numbers we're seeing for tourists, the exact information. But anecdotally, David Clark and restaurant owners and hotel owners will tell you this makes a direct impact every day. I mean, this is not a weekend tourist train. This is not something where people ride it sometimes. People ride this and they want to spend money and they want to come to your town. And the overwhelming response that we do here kind of in the downtown is, I would have never come to Mobile. I would have skipped it and gone to the beach, or I would have stayed in Mississippi, or I would have gone straight to New Orleans, or, you know, whatever the case. But because of this service, I'm in your town, it's great, and now I'm gonna come back with my in-laws. I'm gonna come back with my garden club, which we see a lot of those kind of group activities. And they come back over and over. It's not a one-time ride. People do it on the regular. This is the Battle House. This is one of the grand hotels in downtown that is owned by the Retirement System of Alabama, 3 blocks from the Amtrak station. Again, this is Art Walk. So there's all these kind of experiences that you can have right there next to the platform as opposed to it being, you know, in some other location. So when it comes in here, you see, of course, you know, this is the CSX line. And so to make sure this was done in a way that did not impede freight traffic, a house track had to be constructed. And that's perfectly fine. That's a standard operating procedure. So when that train comes in and it sits in Mobile overnight, it is not on the main line. So it's those kinds of negotiations that we had to do to make sure that we got from this will never happen to yes. And, you know, just to go back for a second, if I can go back. So, and right next in this photo, you see this is the Maritime Museum of the Gulf Coast. That's a good example where before, and the cruise terminal is in the background there. So we have many cruise ships that come and go out of the city. Cruise riders don't spend the amount of time and money in our downtown that Amtrak riders do. I think that's really interesting. Cruise riders come in, they might drive in that morning, they go to the parking deck, they get on the boat, they get off the boat a week later, they get in their car, they might get a tank of gas and they're out of there. These guys on this train are the total opposite. They want to feel it. They want to spend the money. They're there for the experience, not just to get on a physical mode of transportation. That's part of it, but it's something much bigger. So that museum you see in the background, the Maritime Museum, numbers were quite low. To say that it's had a turnaround because of the proximity of the platform, which is just out of view here, would be an understatement. So because of the ridership and what we're hearing from what they want to see, a new Jimmy Buffett experience is opening there. Jimmy Buffett, a native son of Mobile, has donated pretty much all of his kind of artifacts and guitars and all the things he's collected. We're in talks with Margaritaville about doing a restaurant on the rooftop there. Statue of Jimmy Buffett's going outside. All of that momentum is because of this train, which is right around the corner here. So it's just been a pleasure to see not only the people that said this will never work to be wrong, which is great, but it's even better to see its success and that it's not slowing down. We're in talks right now with Amtrak about adding another car. Right now for Saints games, they'll put on an extra car. For the Mardi Gras season, they'll put on an extra car. The demand is so high that we're talking about adding a permanent extra car already. We're not even a year into this service. So that really speaks not only to Amtrak, but of course how they operate and how they think, but working with their partners in the local community. John Robert?
Thank you, Stephen. So big city of Mobile, not initially bought in, now you couldn't take it away from them because of the businesses there, hotels, restaurants, tourism, they see the impact. And Stephen, tell them the award that the governor of Alabama just presented through tourism.
Right. I'm glad you brought that up. So after many meetings in the governor's office and different administrations in Montgomery and trying to get the Department of Transportation to care about this and fund it, which they ended up kind of doing for the first 3 years, we were just notified yesterday that the state of Alabama's Governor's Conference on Tourism is going to give the annual award for tourism for an initiative to the Southern Rail Commission for the initiative of bringing back this train. So to go from where we started, which in those meetings, to getting the governor's award for this speaks volumes.
Yeah, always tell, quite a transformation, but I always tell newly elected leaders, mayors mostly, that at the end of any successful project, your job is to lay laurel wreaths at the feet of the undeserving. We have to give credit to those whether they deserve it or not. And the next time you have an initiative, they'll want to be at the front of the line, the head of the parade, because they know it'll be a success. So Nikki Moon is going to talk to you about the impact in Mississippi, but especially to a small place maybe you've never heard of, but you should definitely visit. And a place that, emerging from the disaster of Katrina, knew that this train could bring a life connectivity across the Gulf, and some of that would spill over in the heart of their little downtown.
Good morning. What a delight to be here. Thank you very much for including me. I'm going to be showing you photos, just random photos that we've taken from 2016, from 2025, up to today. A lot of our volunteers, and many of these I took from the Friends of Amtrak Facebook page, which now has over 34,000 followers, started by a gentleman in Mobile, and it's now covering all sorts of folks with answers to questions about where do I park, can I bring my kids, where do I eat, a great resource for those traveling. As you've seen, August 29, 2005 pretty much brought the coast to its knees. At the time, I owned a little 8-room bed and breakfast built in the 1800s. It was destroyed along with so much of our beautiful coast. Ground zero was Bay St. Louis and Waveland. We lost our bridge that connected us to the coast, and very importantly, we lost our railroad bridge and Amtrak for 20 years. In September 13, I reopened the Baytown Inn, and I knew that part of my job was to bring people into Bay St. Louis to show them that we were alive and well. And after 30 years in the hospitality world, working in New Orleans for New Orleans and Company, it was pretty much right up my alley. Less than 2 years later, Knox Ross, who is now chair of Southern Rail, was coming into town with his friend, another commissioner, Kay Kell. They wanted to look at the bay, talk about what was going on in the town, and Kay and I became fast friends as she moved back, and her love of passenger rail and determination after 3 decades on Southern Rail Commission to reopen our coastal connection was contagious. And on February 18th, 2016, the test train from New Orleans East, we knew what this was going to mean to our small little community and what it would mean, what a game changer it would be for tourism overall. We put together a coalition of movers and shakers from our city, in our county, our chamber, tourism, Rotary, Mardi Gras cruise, our private schools, our public schools, our casinos. And our job was to create excitement not only for Bay St. Louis and the coast, but also to let Amtrak know that we wanted them back and we were ready. We had a lot to do to prepare. Our town was still kind of recuperating. We had to clean up the depot. We had one of the main standing depots on the coast, built in the 20s. We had banners to be made and hung, and a sound system, and a red carpet, and bands to be booked, and champagne, because yes, we are a little bit of New Orleans, so we do love our Prosecco. And everything had to be perfect for that first stop in Mississippi. And then once they got off the train, we had 10 minutes for all of these speakers and to showcase and then get them back on board. Our governor, our mayor, and many others loved the reception that they received in the Bay. In fact, word is that the mayor from Biloxi, Fofo, got on the phone with his folks in Biloxi and said, y'all better start turning it out because the folks in Bay St. Louis are not going to embarrass us. So Gulfport turned out, Biloxi turned out, and so did Pascagoula. We had our green-haired ladies, as you've seen in some of the photos. It's one of our marching clubs. We had antique cars with balloons. We had an RTC band and cheers, hundreds and hundreds of greeters. We were ready. We wanted this train back. After that, as you've heard from John Robert and saw in the video, the Southern Rail Commission and the politicians had their work to do. And it was a struggle. For many, many years, a struggle. But finally, in the summer of 2025, we were told that the inaugural train would come through, that it was happening, that it was real, and we needed to prepare to welcome everyone to Mississippi. So our core group came back together again. The champagne flowed as they got off the train. We had food, we had bands, Mardi Gras cruise, the green-haired ladies came back out again, politicians, golf carts, which we're known for as well, and hundreds of locals ready to cheer on our brand new service once again. It was a perfect sunshine morning on the coast of Mississippi, and I was lucky enough to ride to Mobile and experience the joy in each Mississippi town, welcoming this brand new service in Gulfport, Biloxi, Pascagoula, all showing off their best. And then Mobile doing what they do so well, a great show of hospitality. This train was going to be a success. As you have heard, in just 7 months, we had over 100,000 passengers. The goal was 80 in a year. Amtrak added service for Mardi Gras between Mobile and New Orleans, and all of our coastal communities. We all celebrate Mardi Gras, and everyone wanted to participate in it. People were booking all of the Saints games to make sure that they could ride over easily and make it an efficient way to go to the game, because it drops you off in New Orleans steps from the Superdome. We see groups daily leaving New Orleans, leaving Bay St. Louis and going to Mobile to experience just for the day. People taking their grandkids who have never had the opportunity to ride a train, going over and just spending the day in Mobile, or going over to the aquarium in Gulfport. They take shopping trips at Christmas time to New Orleans. They look through the lobbies of all of the beautiful hotels, or they just get on the train to ride it for the very first time. We have a group that is meeting in New Orleans this October, a group of finance companies that are bringing 50 over to Bay St. Louis to talk about how we rebuilt and how small towns can regroup. And of course, they'll shop and eat. We promote it every single day through our restaurants and our hotels and inns. We have golf carts picking up for folks and taking them wherever they like to go, although it's only just a short walk from our depot to downtown. We're a very small community in Bay St. Louis, roughly 14,000 residents. This service has touched so many of them who now go and take a ride to New Orleans without having to drive. Maybe they couldn't, maybe they just simply didn't want to. But now they go and enjoy, and on a budget. Some of the seats, if you book early in advance, are $19. And you park for free in the bay, and you get on, and you enjoy a beautiful ride through the coast. We have the highest per capita ridership of any of the 5 communities on the ride, because our people have embraced this new way of transportation, and they are loving it. I believe in promoting the entire coast of Mississippi, and this service does just that. Coming east from New Orleans, we are the first stop, and we have a group of volunteers that greet every train in the morning and most trains in the evening. They've really gotten into it and dress up for all the occasions, and we even decorate the stop for our events. There's about 30 that have been trained, and they are very good at what they do. In fact, I just heard yesterday afternoon that Travel and Leisure voted 12 most welcoming towns in America. Bay St. Louis is number 2. A few weeks ago, Coastal Mississippi, which is our destination marketing organization, and works hand in hand with New Orleans and Company and also Visit Mobile, brought 5 travel journalists into our city on the train. They spent a day in Bay St. Louis. They toured museums along the coast, took the ferry out to Ship Island, and then ended their week in Mobile for a meeting of Travel South. I can't wait for the stories that they bring out. They were from the Netherlands, Australia, Spain, France, and Italy. Without Amtrak, we would not have had this. One of our goals is to attract the 7 million international visitors that go to New Orleans every year, because internationally, they love to travel by train. They're used to it. And now we have that opportunity to bring them from New Orleans and bring them along our beautiful coast and into Mobile. We've received great publicity, USA Today, Garden and Gun, Southern Living, and lots of local publications around the country. So what I can leave you with is that the efforts we put forth in Bay St. Louis not only brought us together as a community, our city and county officials, our merchants, our restaurants, our schools, and community leaders, we all believed how great this service would be for us, that we all banded together and brought an enthusiasm that only a small town can bring. We did that in 2016, we did it again in August of last year, and we continue to do it every day as we welcome our visitors. I encourage you to continue to push for Amtrak service in your communities. It benefits all of the small towns as well as the big ones. It has made a huge difference for us. Thanks so much.
So I think you've heard 3 powerful stories, but it's even larger than that. The casinos, which line the Mississippi Gulf Coast, they want to lease private cars to put on this train as an amenity to their gamblers. Now, there'll be many things that would have to work out to make that happen, but that's how casinos are thinking of how to utilize this train. When it was first announced that it may run and could have run in time for the Super Bowl, casino called me and said, I want to buy every ticket on every train that runs that week. Because they stay at the casino, they run them over to New Orleans and they bring them back. So the private sector is thinking about how to leverage this new asset that they have. And I certainly have to acknowledge that the Federal Railroad Administration, Senator Wicker and others can give them these tools, but then they have to use the tools. And I see Alan Rutter sitting in the back. He was administrator and served on the Amtrak board at the same time I did. Alan, you didn't have those tools that they've got today. But they've got them today, and Sarah Feinberg was the administrator right after you, a couple couple of administrators away. And Sarah was on the initial inaugural run, the demonstration train. And she got off at Bay St. Louis, and you saw the crowds there, and she turned to me and she said, "So much emotion here, this is so powerful." And I said, "Sarah, love always is." And that's what you're seeing here in Bay St. Louis. And she got to the podium, tears in her eyes, and said, "I don't want to just give you a train, I want to move here." But that's the kind of people still move on emotion. And making your argument just about steel, wheels, and rail, that only stirs a small percentage of the population. But you make it about stories like this that impact human lives and a human vision, now you've got something that can move votes on Capitol Hill, votes at the state legislature, and votes in your local communities. And I want to salute, Rusty's not here anymore, but we have a partner in FRA that's determined to use the tools they've been given and get the money out the door. And we want to relieve them of that burden of what to do with the money. We think we've got lots of ideas that they can lay some of that money on us, because we aren't through yet with the vision of connecting passenger rail throughout coastal and larger South. So Peter, any questions anyone has, we'll be glad to answer.
All right, microphone's open here in the center. If y'all have any questions, please come on up. I do have one I'd like to go ahead and ask to start with here. And this is just amazing what's happened down there. I have to call it a true Southern revival. It's just too good to be true. Tell us a little bit. I know the Southern Rail Commission's work is not done yet. You've got the route established there with the Mardi Gras train, but there's other things that are coming up. And maybe briefly, if you could describe, especially one that's would be very dear to Texas, and that would be the I-20 corridor, and where we stand on that right now.
Sure. So of course, the Southern Rail Commission will work the Crescent, which I like to think originates in Meridian and heads north to New York, and originates in Meridian and heads south to New Orleans. But that's a route they'll focus on. Also, the city of New Orleans from Chicago to New Orleans. Also, the Sunset Limited, hopefully making that a daily service. But they want to connect New Orleans to Baton Rouge, which is an obvious connection that should be made. They want to connect Meridian to Dallas-Fort Worth. When I was on the board and chairman, we were 3 weeks from instituting that service. It was going to be called the Crescent Star. We'd take the Crescent and split it in Meridian and send the overnight section to Dallas-Fort Worth along what is now called the I-20 corridor, the I-20 Speedway. It is owned by CPKC with trackage rights that Norfolk Southern has, and from Meridian to Shreveport, that's the route. And then when you leave Shreveport, there are 2 other ways to get to Dallas-Fort Worth. So the Southern Rail Commission applied for our corridor identification and development program grant for the institution of that service. We were awarded the grant, and the grant specifically, we finished step 1. The FRA gives you $500,000 to complete step 1, which is to talk about how you will attack this problem, basically. And then step 2 is where you really get into where your stop's going to be, what kind of infrastructure is going to be needed. You've got to pick a route at the end of that. So once you leave Shreveport, the most direct route is on UP into Dallas-Fort Worth. There's a CPKC route that is more circuitous, that takes longer. CPKC has said as part of their STB merger agreement that they would run that service all the way on their line. Now, the FRA grant, and Alan, you know this, with a grant like that, you've got to, if you're trying to get from A to B, you've got to study the various ways you can get there. And from Meridian to Shreveport, there's only one way. After that, there are two. So as a part of the grant, in step 2, we have to look at and analyze both ways of getting from Shreveport to Dallas-Fort Worth. That's the process we're kicking off now. You know, you've got to look at it. You don't do a NEPA PE, but you got to look at it environmentally. You got to look at the population served. You've got to look at ridership and revenue projections. You've got to look at agreements with freight host. All of those things go into the mix. And at the end of the step 2, then you have a chosen site. Now, issues past Shreveport get to be a Texas issue, Peter. So there's got to be some lifting at the state DOT and legislative level about the importance of connecting that route. And there have been forays in the past for Texas to join the Southern Rail Commission. It has to be acted, signed by the governor. Then the 3 states that comprise the SRC have to accept that. And you can imagine that's a 3-4 year process when you're dealing with 4 different legislatures and financial commitments that go with it. So we're in step 2. You know, we certainly want to work and will work, and it's only right that we do, with the interest here in Texas, to talk about the 2 different ways of getting past Shreveport.
Well, we do happen to have an elected state representative with us at the conference, and also we have one that's a soon-to-be. And we do have some legislative staff here today from a couple of the offices as well. So if they're listening, might be a good year in 27 maybe to file a bill to join the Southern Rail Commission.
Well, and I think the commission would certainly welcome that. It's not up to the commission, it's up to the 3 states that will then agree to accept it. But there's work you can do right now that doesn't have anything to do with the Southern Rail Commission, but does have we got to have a freight that will work with us to get there. And at some point, Texas is going to have to put some dollars on the table to finish out this process, because there are non-federal matches that go through the whole CIDP process. We still think it is ultimately an extension of long-distance service. I think there's going to be such success that I think Mississippi is going to want a train from Meridian to Vicksburg serving the airport, aside from connecting to the rest of the country. I can tell you, North Louisiana is all about connecting across Mississippi and into Texas, because they see it as a huge economic generator for them and for their growth.
I guess my question is, why just Mobile? Why didn't they extend it all the way to Jacksonville? Or is it, what's going on with that situation? Is it possible?
So the Port of Mobile position, and you can certainly correct me if I'm wrong, the Port of Mobile's position is that taking the train through the port infrastructure, rail infrastructure, to get in the direction of Florida would be an imposition on the movement of freight through the port. And it's an infrastructure matter. You can solve that with infrastructure investment. And we did have at one time an opportunity for a $1 million study just on that fact, but at the time, the port did not want that. I want to believe that they may think differently about how they could improve their own infrastructure for delivery of freight and commodities through the port. But that's the issue. If you can't get past the port, you can't get to Florida. Now, Pensacola badly wants it. And there are so many people in Mississippi and Alabama that have homes along the panhandle of Florida. They want that connection as well. I think if the government, state government and leadership of Florida would say this is something we want, let us work with you, Alabama, to help figure out the points of constriction, there may be some opportunities. But we don't want to raise that right now. We've got a train running. We want it to be a success. We want it to continue to be a success. Mississippi, Alabama, and Louisiana have to put up additional monies to run it for the 3 years past the first 3 years, and ultimately, commit to operating support for the train for the long run. So we're focused on this train and those battles and those outcomes now, and are ready to, Florida has wanted to join the SRC and ready to entertain all of those things, but you got to have leadership at the state capitals for both of them.
Thank you, John Robert, for a wonderful presentation. You mentioned that the ridership on Mardi Gras is 116, 132, I don't remember
Well, the
number.
latest count is like 111,000.
Okay.
I think is the latest number I've seen.
And the forecast was for 40 some odd.
Initially, yes.
Okay, so that means there are 70,000 more paying passengers that have provided revenue to the service. What's the financial impact of that extra revenue?
Well,
how much has it reduced the deficit? Let me put it that way.
Okay, so understand that under the Restoration and Enhancement Grant, the first year it's 90% federal, matched by 10% non-federal. And the next year it drops to 80 and 70 and 60 for a 6-year run. So every year the non-federal percentage goes up. That doesn't mean the non-federal dollars go up, but the percentage does. So Amtrak will take the revenue, and Todd, correct me if I'm wrong, they're going to take the end of the year's revenue, and then they will come to the city of Mobile and the state of Mississippi and the state of Louisiana that have put up the operating support and say, here's what the numbers finally produced. And yes, you would expect that while the percentage goes up, the actual raw number of dollars needed to support the train should come down if it's doing double and triple the ridership. But we'll see.
Yeah. That's the point I wanted to make. Thank you much.
Well, with Virginia ran their new service, and it tripled ridership and double revenue, and for at least the first year, maybe the 1 or 2 afterwards, they didn't have to put up matches because it was doing so well. Of course, they expand service and want more service, and that's the good thing about this. The better it does, the more people want it. Montgomery would love to be connected. Huntsville, the largest city, would love to be connected by rail. Yes.
My question is similar. It's more in terms of the economic impact for Mobile and maybe specifically some of the new business that the community may be seeing as a result of this, restaurants, bars, et cetera.
So as I said, the report, the actual data on that is going to begin in August of this year, so we have a comprehensive 12-month period. But to your point, you saw the golf carts that were there waiting on people. You saw the trolley system, and there's also those existed, but marginally. Those now are staples in the downtown that you see twice a day, 7 days a week, and they've both expanded. And to that end, heritage tourism is a big part of anybody's tourism economy in any community. And in Mobile, because there's so much of a story to tell, with a city founded in 1702 that's been through so much conflict, so many different eras, so many different wars, and also different cultures that have been there, that's a big part of the story that we tell. And to that end, the entities that give heritage tourism tours are bursting at the seams. They've added more routes, they've added more tours, they've really had to meet the demand, because when people get off that train and they say, well, look, this is a charming town, and you've got oysters, and you've got shrimp, and you've got Mardi Gras and all these great things, but what else can I do while I'm here? Because I've only got this amount of time if it's a day trip, or one day if it's a turnaround. And so the heritage tourism has really taken off, whether it's the Africa Town story. You mentioned me telling the Maritime Museum, we have the Carnival Museum, the History Museum. All of those places are seeing an increase.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
May have to lower this.
Thank you for being here. I wanted to say congratulations because when you say 20 years, I think most people don't truly understand what was happening in those 20 years. 20 years ago, 2005, is when Hurricane Katrina hit. And we were watching it on television. For me, when watching it, I thought, what is it I can do to help? I can on construction or anything. But just down the road from here, on the other side of 360, is the National Office of Disaster Assistance. And they didn't have enough people to handle the big need that there was for disaster assistance. And so they had to ramp up. And as part of that, I went on to do the loan closing documents. And because I had an economic development background, I did loan closing documents for businesses. I ran into the problem that even though I had all this money to give, there was a dentist office. Cost a lot of money to put a dentist office back together. Daycare center that get money too. And even though I completed the loan and all the loan closing documents for them, they said, well, it's not that we don't appreciate the money, it's just where are the people going to come. As a dentist, I can put the office back together, but where my patients going to come from. As a daycare center, I can put that back together, where the children are going to come from. So it was very frustrating to me to think that we had all this money to give. There was this vicious cycle of, well, business doesn't want to come because the people aren't there, and the people don't want to come because the businesses aren't there. And I just thought, how are we going to ever make this happen for all this to come back together? And you were struggling against all that 20 years ago to start all this. And so I just think it's really a great accomplishment that you should be recognized for. When people think, why didn't it take them 20 years? But they were working against a lot 20 years ago. And so I think it's really a great thing. So thank you so much.
Well, certainly, thank you. I was mayor when Katrina hit, and although Meridian's not on the coast, we lost 17,000 trees down in the right-of-way. Think about that. And of course, all water and sewer and 3,000 homes damaged. But you go to the Mississippi coast, and keep in mind it was a levee failure in New Orleans. The eye of the storm hit where Nikki lives. And when I say it wiped out everything in Mississippi on the Gulf for 2 miles in and 60 miles across, that's the honest truth. Graves were sucked out of the ground. They're in the Gulf today still somewhere. US 90 was gone. The CSX right away broke the back of that 35-foot storm surge that hit. People who were there on the top of the Hotel Markham in downtown Gulfport said you could, as the storm approached, you watched the seabed become bare because it sucked all the water out and then it returned it as a 35-foot wall. So that's what these people faced. Trent Lott had a home there. His was in sticks too. And you never saw the people of Mississippi fighting among themselves. You saw them crawl out and begin to rebuild life. And Nikki would tell you there are still big chunks of coastal Mississippi that are vacant properties, empty. This is going to help solve that issue. So this was what was driving it. Thank you for saying the kind words about the people of Meridian, of Mississippi, who had to get up and make it happen. Our church ran a clinic in what was left of a gymnasium down on Long Beach, down on the coast, and people would come in with wood and metal that they didn't know were driven into their bodies by the wind, like darts. A young mother who came in and she had the baby during Katrina, there was no family left and she didn't know what to do. Just those kind of stories, I mean, people had nothing, and now they've got hope.
A round of applause, please, for our panel. Thank you.